Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later, we're going to talk to gubernatorial hopeful George Lopez. But first, the guy who's guaranteed, unless something really weird happens, to become the Republican nominee for AG, George Brauchler. Good to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You've been a prosecutor for years and years and years.
Long time.
Long time. And so you got some experience in this. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is I live in Boulder. You can make whatever joke you like about that.
I went to school there. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. Well,
7 years.
I played a lot of Frisbee in college too. Yeah.
Right.
And I own weapons that the city council finds offensive. And I believe they want to treat gun owners as a second-class citizen and push them out. They want to separate us. They want us to get registered. They want us to carry little permission slips from the police. I'm part of a lawsuit to try to fight that. I want to thank Mountain States Legal Foundation for doing that, but I'm a plaintiff. This stuff goes up to a role that you want to be, which is Attorney General. I want to know, from your opinion, does a city have a right to put in those gun laws, or does the state's laws against preemption block that? I'm curious, and I want to know what as AG, what you would think.
Yeah. First, I think this is a matter of statewide concern. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and that's what really gives the Attorney General a position here on this. I think the only thing that muddies the waters for us are those two cases out of Denver that they have, one from '94 and the one afterwards, that seem to suggest that the lower court rulings on their own assault weapons bans may be somehow permissible because they're a home rule city of some kind. I don't think that we can live in a state where not only 64 counties, but the hundreds of different townships and cities can create their own set of rules on firearms that infringe upon the Second Amendment rights. I do think this is something the Attorney General, and if I had to guess, I presume General Kaufman is looking pretty closely at this right now.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more. I know you're not running on a Second Amendment platform, but I'm assuming that you're a supporter.
A big supporter. I carry concealed. I'm a gun owner, multiple guns. I've taken my kids to the Centennial Gun Club as soon as they were old enough to go through the gun familiarization, gun safety courses. They've all pulled the trigger. I believe the Second Amendment is as important to us as all those others that are attached to our Constitution.
So the fear up in Boulder, of course, is school shootings and mass shootings, and so that's why they did this.
Yep.
I think it's completely symbolic. I don't think it will change anything except to ostracize gun owners. Mental health is the issue.
Huge.
Yeah. The legislature had what's called a red flag bill.
Yep.
It died. You were supportive of it. A red flag bill basically says that if somebody seems like a danger, the state has the ability to, on a temporary basis, to take away their guns.
Right.
You've gotten some flack for supporting this bill. I want to make it clear. I support a red flag law,
right.
Not the one that was there.
Right.
Tell me, why did you support it?
First, to use the term "some flack" is so generous. I mean, I always knew that social media had people out there that could go thermonuclear, but now I've seen it, and man, that is a place for some really unhappy people. Yeah, I have taken a lot of flack for that. Let me tell you that some of the decision making here involves the timing of everything, right? Like, I have been in this very unique position in my career to have been the prosecutor on the Columbine Massacre felonies, to have been the prosecutor that got called out to the scene on December the 13th, 2013, when Sweet Claire Davis was shotgunned to death by a disturbed kid. I ended up being the prosecutor that inherited the prosecution of the Aurora Theater Massacre and handling that. And then I was also the prosecutor on the last day of last year that got called out to that parking lot at the corner of University and County Line behind the bowling alley when Sheriff Walcher and Sheriff Spurlock from Arapahoe and Douglas, two of my sheriffs, were talking about how are we going to rescue these deputies that got fired upon, one in particular who is still trapped in that home. And in the aftermath of that, you know, everybody said the same thing that I've always said, you've always said, and that is, look, we just need to keep firearms out of the hands of the crazies and the violent. I mean, that's what we need to do. It's mental health and it's violence. But nothing happened. January, February, March, April, all dribble by with no action by the legislature until the very end of April. And I got to tell you, the timing of this legislation was awful, and that you can't have a bill on a sensitive topic like the Second Amendment drop without ample opportunity for people to come in and testify before it, after it. All those different things were missing from this. However, it was the only effort that I saw that the legislature make that had any chance of trying to prevent Zach Parrish Part 2. And I believe, and I know Sheriff Spurlock and Sheriff Walter and about 2/3 of all the other sheriffs in the state, the chiefs of police, all believe that the status quo wasn't working and we needed to do something.
And to be fair, during testimony, you brought up a lot of the objections that we have. You wanted it to have a sunset provision to see if it worked.
Absolutely.
I worry about the ex post facto part of that.
Yep.
If I'm saying that the right way, my Latin isn't as good as yours. But the idea that whoever you're taking the guns from should have due process to go to somebody and say, no, that accusation is wrong. And also, I'm concerned, I want to make sure that anybody whose guns are taken, that they will be returned.
Yes.
And just because it says they will be returned doesn't mean the cops always return them. You made all those concerns as well. And in the end, you gave it support. Why was that?
I did. I really believed, and maybe I'm just naive on the legislative process, but I really believed that if we could get it into hearing, and that my testimony, there's 11 people in this House Judiciary Committee. I only spoke to the 4. Spoke to Neville and the rest of the group over there because they're going to be the decision makers. But I sat next to Dan May, DA from El Paso County, and we both advocated for changes to this bill, including the idea of a sunset provision. And I thought, man, if we could get someone to create a sunset provision and then work our way to making this a workable, passable bill. What I did not realize, because I ain't a legislator, is that this thing was never going to be changed because it was dead from the word go across that part of the caucus. So I suppose the 2 routes I could have taken were, I'll support this if you do this, or I'm going to support this, but I want you to make these changes. And I took the latter approach, and it is what it is. I mean, I think if...
Well, and also, let me go into your psyche for a second.
Yeah.
My guess is you also wanted to make a signal as you're going to campaign that you do support a red flag bill, and knowing this one was going to die. All right, I tell you what, we don't need to hash that one out. I think we got that one covered. Let's talk about being Attorney General, which is a crazy important position. You work, first of all, why? You're a prosecutor.
Yeah.
Just go into the defense world now and make some real money. Don't do this.
Interesting.
Why AG?
Well, first off, I was in the defense world. I left prosecution in 2006, and I didn't come back.
Prosecution?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
really?
left prosecution in 2006, went into private practice, did civil, did criminal defense. I even took on the office that I'm in charge of now and beat him in trial. But it wasn't until I got back from Iraq that I thought, man, my passion here is in the public service part of this thing, and I came back to prosecution. And that really speaks to why the Attorney General piece. You and I know I was running for governor before. And I felt like for the grassroots, blue-collar kid kind of Lakewood thing that we were doing, I thought we were doing well. But when General Kaufman left the AG's race in November, and that, as you know, that is late in the game for a statewide race, it became pretty apparent that there weren't a lot of options left. Ken Buck wasn't going to run. There was a bunch of other great, for AG, there's a bunch of people out there who would have been fantastic candidates in June or July or August. But now we're in November, heading into the rest of the worst fundraising quarter of the year, and we're getting ready to take on some guys that include a dude from Obama's administration who's raised $1 jillion to take back this seat. And I became convinced pretty quickly that, look, if I'm in this race for just a specific title or because I want the job where my name appears on every piece of paper and I get driven around in the black SUV, yeah, I should stay the course on governor with the 800 other people running. But if I want to do something great for my home state, and I do, and I want to make this more like the state I grew up in and less like the state we're becoming, which is very California, then this is the right thing to do at the right time, and dang it, I got the skill set to make this thing work out great.
What will be the #1 issue when you're there? I mean, going in, you're picking up all sorts of cases, all sorts of prosecutions. I see that the AG's office is dealing and regulating all sorts of things that it really shouldn't be in. You've got to worry about things like waterways of the U.S. and are you going to join or fight Washington, D.C.? Give me the top couple things.
First off, if you accept that the Attorney General's role at its core is to be a defender of Coloradans and a protector and defender of our laws and our Constitution, then everything else makes sense if you flow from that. The rule of law arguments become easy. The idea that federalism and the 10th Amendment still matter become an easy argument to make. And so when you see attorneys general joining certain lawsuits to push back against federal overreach, That's what an attorney general does, is to protect our state from the federal government as much as it is to protect Coloradans from either the people that are willing to violate the law or this overregulation from even our own state. I want to be that champion for that piece of liberty and for that piece of federalism, is to protect Colorado and Coloradans. You look across the board, you see Republican attorneys general under Obama, and I can't remember how many times, but it wasn't that many, filing lawsuits to push back on WOTUS, on the waters of the U.S. and these other things, the Clean Power Plan. This new generation of hyper-activist, super progressive attorneys general, and that's reflected in the two candidates on the other side of this campaign, they're interested in filing lawsuits to demand federal overreach. They're suing for federal underreach. When President Trump said...
Stop you there, because that is crucial.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of AGs, including Kaufman, who have come forward and said, no, we're gonna stand up and defend ourselves from the Clean Power Plan or the waters of the United States, where the EPA is going to take over every creek in Colorado, every puddle, and say, no, that's our territory. You're saying, and I think you're absolutely right, that there are a group of hardcore progressive AG candidates who want to sue to say you're not doing enough overreach in Colorado. I don't think there could be more of a distinction in this.
Absolutely right. I think what the progressives want to say, though, is, hey, we're just doing what the Republicans did. We're taking a page out of their book. But the motivations matter here, right? One is for liberty and the state and protecting you from the federal government. The other one is to say, I demand bureaucrats from 1,500 miles from here to have rules that tell us how we live our lives, whether it's net neutrality, whether it's the Clean Power Plan. And I think the rule of law piece matters here, because they're starting to incorporate that talk into their campaign, like encouraging these bureaucratic rules to become the norm is the rule of law, when instead what it really should be is, what are we willing to impose on ourselves as people that govern ourselves, instead of these bureaucrats out in Washington, D.C. creating these rules.
Got about a half a minute here. This is going to be the first election where unaffiliateds can weigh in on all things. How are you going to pull into that unaffiliated mix this fall?
Frankly, I think what you've seen is the unaffiliated thing grows a lot because there's a pox on both our houses and that the brands have been damaged and whatnot. But I think that the issue of protecting Colorado first, of standing up for Coloradans, that isn't even a partisan issue. That's an issue that resonates with people who just want to come here, raise their families here, and live here with as much liberty as possible. That's what this guy's going to do.
George, always thank you. People want to get involved, where do they go?
To my house. No, they go to George2018.com.
George2018.com. Thank you, George.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Read me in the Post. Check out the Independence Institute.